Welcome back to another edition of Through the Smoke, a Miami Hurricanes football and recruiting podcast here on the 24/7 Sports Network. David Lake joined as always by Gabby Urrutia. It's official visit season. Recruiting never stops, and now it is essentially with this new calendar, it's decision-making time as Miami's going to welcome in a nice group of recruits, 16 recruits, as we know, at the time of recording on Thursday morning. And then that's going to happen. Recruits are going to roll through here this entire month. Some decisions will be made in June, some decisions will be made in July and August, but for the most part, this is when recruiting classes are formed. So it's an important part of the calendar for college football programs, and we're gonna break down Miami's first group of summer weekend official visitors. Before we dive into that, I want to highlight our sponsors, and we'll start, of course, with Canes Connection. That is Miami's collective. They play a critical role in Miami being able to land what appears, it's on pace to easily be a top 10 class and has the potential to be a top 5 class. So those guys are critical to the entire talent acquisition operation. Go support those guys any way you can at canesconnection.com. And of course, our guy Nick Musarino. If you've been injured in a slip and fall, boating accident, trucking accident, any type of car accident, Uber accident, Nick Musarino is the personal injury attorney I would turn to if I was in need of his assistance. You can contact Nick at 561-960-9870 or visit his website at flinjury.law. And if you're in the market for real estate, whether it's buying, selling, investing in South Florida, you should definitely hit up our guy Aaron Pascal, Gabby.
Yeah, definitely. Again, anything in the real estate market, Aaron Pascal is there to help you with any of your needs. With the market changes, lower mortgage rates, new opportunities are opening up every single day. So whether you're buying, selling, or just exploring options, Aaron Pascal is there to help you, and he's always open to chat a little bit of Miami Hurricanes football. So hit up Aaron Pascal at 305-497-5773 or at abpascal.kw.com.
All right, so let's dive into this weekend's official visit list, Gabby. And we'll separate the group with commits and, non-Miami commits. So let's go through the commits right now first. Again, there's 16 guys. I count 6 commits set to visit. That includes 5-star corner Dante Wright, 5-star wide receiver Nick Lanier, 4-star cornerback AI King Hall, 4-star linebacker AJ Randall, 4-star offensive lineman Sean Tatum, 4-star defensive lineman Ezekiel Ayangbile. So, Gabby, just, you could pick and choose of these commits, because official visits are important for commits too, just kind of locking them down,
Yeah.
making them feel like they're making the right decision with their commitment, with sticking with that commitment. Who in this group of commits are you maybe monitoring, or do you feel like has the most interesting, for lack of a better phrase, storyline that you'll be monitoring this weekend?
Yeah, absolutely. I think a few guys that I guess, most invested in. First of all, Nick Lanier, right? There's always
Hmm.
been talk around his recruitment since he committed to Miami on 305 day at Mario Cristobal's house. Whether or not his process is gonna continue, is he gonna shut it down? Is he gonna entertain Texas A&M or Syracuse or any of these other schools that have been so active in his recruitment throughout this process? And I don't know if we have like true clarity on where that stands right now. I think he's always mentioned wanting to take other visits. Miami, of course, does not want that.
Hmm.
So I am curious to see what the feedback is with Nick Lanier, if he's shutting down his process, if he is going to go explore maybe LSU or one of these other schools. So newsy, storyliney type of, out of the Miami commits, I think Nick Lanier is potentially the most interesting one. A couple guys that I just really want to kind of see in person that I've never gotten eyes on. King Hall, the cornerback out of Alabama, who recently flipped to from Oregon. I've never seen him in person, so eager to get eyes on him and just kind of see what it all looks like. And same with AJ Randall, kind of seeing what it looks like up close. I mean, he's got that 6'3", 210-pound frame, and the program is certainly buzzing about what he brings to the table, and not shy to bring up that this was Corey Heatherman's favorite linebacker this cycle, the guy that they felt like he needed to get, and Miami, got made sure to get that done for him. So I am curious to see what both those guys look like in person. Dante Wright, David, I mean, just getting eyes on him in the spring,
Yeah,
okay, my knee-jerk reaction was like, wow,
prototypical.
prototypical, NFL potential frame already on the rising high school senior. So I'm just excited to see him again and spend a little bit more time around him and just kind of continue to learn more about what it is that kind of makes him tick and makes him go. So that's kind of what I'm most closely keeping an eye on as far as the actual commitments in the class already.
All right, let's turn the page to the guys that aren't committed to Miami, but are planning to visit here this weekend. And we'll go in order of, recruiting ranking. So that's the order. And we'll start at the top with five-star defensive end Jaden Bryant, who is committed to LSU. He goes about 6'4", 250 out of Irmo High School in Columbia, South Carolina. Number 20 overall player on the composite. Gabby, his body type and also like his high school production makes you think a lot of Ruben Bain. With,
Yeah.
he wins with his power and guile. He's productive at the high school level, 32 and a half sacks, 54 tackles for loss in his high school career. Seems like Texas A&M, seems like South Carolina also involved here with trying to flip him from his LSU commit. But he's an intriguing player, and again, this is a high bar, right, for Miami. But there is when you watch him, it's kind of like, okay, that's a lot of Ruben Bain qualities that he does possess. So what do we need to know about Mr. Bryant going into this visit?
Yeah, it's a lofty comparison, right? Just because of how good Ruben
Yeah.
Bain is. But honestly, like that's just that's what you get when you kind of look at Jaden Bryant, the way he's built. He's probably not like that ultra long, lanky type of edge rusher. Like he definitely is more in that Ruben Bain mold. Probably has a little bit more size. Like he's probably a little bit taller, probably a little bit longer at the same stage of development, but definitely has that thickness that makes you kind of think, man, could this be, a player of that similar, at least play style with the motor, the way it runs hot, the way he plays so hard, the kind of alpha personality traits that you got with Ruben Bain. I think Jaden Bryant definitely brings a lot of those shades. So this is a priority recruit for Miami. We keep kind of hammering the table, David, that Miami needs to land a premium defensive end in this class.
Hmm.
They've done a good job in previous cycles of getting guys, but I think they need to kind of dip back into that upper echelon of defensive end talent. I think Jaden Bryant checks that box. They're obviously going after DJ Jacobs, the number one overall player in the class too, but I don't think Jaden Bryant would be any sort of consolation prize to DJ Jacobs. Like I think Jaden Bryant is an elite level prospect, and I think this is going to be a big visit as far as just continuing to chip away at the Tigers, and then positioning yourself to potentially beat Texas A&M, maybe South Carolina, his hometown school, for his commitment signature, whatever it comes down to at the end.
How open? What are the vibes? How open do you think he is from in terms of like looking away from LSU?
Yeah, I think he's pretty open. Look, he's taking visits. Like a lot of these guys that are committed, I feel like a lot of these schools kind of lock these guys down. I think Jaden Bryant having like a full slate of visits that he plans to take, I think is pretty telling as far as where he's at in his recruiting process. I think he committed to LSU without having ever visited over there
Yeah.
when he committed to them at the Under Armour All-American game. So it feels like there's opportunity to sway him. Again, the Tigers landed his commitment for a reason, and I think Miami or someone else is going to have to make it so that he flips to them for the right reasons. Obviously, football reasons, of course, the NIL and all that stuff that goes into it too. But Miami, I think, has a really intriguing case. I think they have a really intriguing, of course, the production and what they've done with the NFL draft and what they just did with Ruben Bain, who's a similar, kind of like a player comp, I guess, if you wanted to do that. So I think Miami has a really compelling case, and I definitely think he's open-minded to the possibility of Miami.
We'll stay in that five-star range in the composite rankings and discuss linebacker Caden Henderson, who goes about 6'2"-ish, 220-ish out of Tampa Jesuit High School here in the state of Florida. He's the number 24 overall player in the country according to the composite. Gabby, when you watch him, like his high school tape, he's explosive. He does have some versatility because I do think he can he can perform well enough in coverage, but his strength is definitely attacking the line of scrimmage, whether that's as a blitzer or just as a downhill tackler in space. Um, he's a very productive player in high school as well, and he plays with violence. It seems like LSU, A&M, Notre Dame. It seems like these are going to be. It seems like Gabby, there's like five common schools who
Yeah,
Miami's always
typically.
going against. Like
Yep.
A&M, we've discussed that.
Yep.
Notre Dame for a lot of these guys, a lot of LSU and a lot of Georgia too. But anyways, Caden Henderson, Miami just got a big time linebacker they're excited about in AJ Randall. I think you and I, our opinions are that man, it'd be great if Miami could land another linebacker in this class that's also extremely talented, and Caden Henderson kind of fits that billing.
Absolutely. I mean, super talented prospect. I mean, this is a guy that Miami's been recruiting for it seems like 2 years now, at least, like
Hmm.
actively. And so I'm curious on what the feedback's gonna be coming out of the visit. Again, Miami got AJ Randall, and that was a big win for them. And now I'm just curious as they kind of play this game of sort of like musical chairs where it seems like spots are filling up quickly and you got to kind of decide how you're going to fill these spots, right? We've
Right.
talked about this, and I'm writing something now for the site that's just kind of continuing to emphasize after more conversations that Miami is they're staying pretty firm to this idea that they're not really going to sign very many, like much more, or they don't
Hmm.
anticipate, at least at this stage of the process, with the way that they have evaluated the roster, with what's returning, what they want to prioritize retaining after the season, you kind of have to have that projected mindset of
Hmm.
what you anticipate the roster looks like in 2027. There's just not a lot of room. Like it's not because they don't like guys or because certain guys are. It's like there's just only so many spots that they can take without having to kind of cut on the back end, and I don't think they want to do that. So, with that in mind, I think I am curious how they go about this linebacker situation in general. We'll talk about multiple linebackers just throughout.
Right.
There's a bunch of guys that we can dive into. It's, whether it's Noah Glover, another top 247 talent, Jalathan Mayfield. Those are three uncommitted linebackers that are going to be here, with Caden Henderson included in that group. And I think Miami has to decipher how they're going to go about that. Are you going
They're
to pay the
trying.
premium?
They're trying to impose leverage by bringing in three linebackers. I would assume this is me talking,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
Like that's
I think that's
just
fair.
that's the game, right? And
Yeah.
so yeah, let's go into like Noah Glover, 6'1", 205 out of Virginia, four-star linebacker, 154 overall player. He also has visits to Georgia, Texas A&M, Notre Dame. Again, everyone's kind of fighting for the same
The same.
players.
Right.
And then Jalathan Mayfield, 6'1", 215 out of North Carolina, number 218 overall player in the composite. He's visited Indiana already. He's also going to visit Oregon, Georgia, Kentucky. He might, I guess, it looks like on his profile, make his commitment, maybe July 17th, I think I saw.
Yep.
But he's a tackle machine, 152 tackles, 26 tackles for loss. So yeah, let's just have the linebacker discussion because I do think that's one of the interesting storylines of this weekend is
Yeah.
okay, again, let's go through it. Let's just uh, you know, go through all of the bullet points. Miami has how many commits now? 15?
15.
They want to take, give or take one or two. They want to take 20. So let's just
Right.
let's just operate with 20 being the number.
Yep.
So that means you got five spots left. We know,
Right.
resource allocation, they're gonna need a lot of resources to land one of those premier defensive ends that we've
Right.
talked about. We know that they probably want to land one more wide receiver. We know they probably want to land one more tight end.
Hmm.
We know they probably want to land a safety. Is that fair
Right.
to say?
Yep. Definitely.
And then look, I for this staff, I would never rule out a line of scrimmage player that they fall in love
Right.
with. So
Yep.
who could that be? I don't know. Uh, but then you got linebackers as well, and Miami has three coming in this weekend. I think a lot of these evaluations that they do, they they lean on like their read on the personality of the player and the family that they get the vibe that they get from them in person during these official visits.
For sure.
So that's a big part of the evaluation. But I think essentially they have three linebackers that they're excited about. And, when you do that and you have one space available, there can certainly be a type of messaging if you genuinely feel this way. Hey, we got one spot open. Whoever wants it first can come and get it.
Yeah, and I think a part of it too is just like sticking all these guys in the same room, and it's just like
Right. Who
who's
wants
gonna
it?
kind of who wants it, who's gonna rise to this, who's gonna sit in this meeting room and kind of be the alpha dog. I think you can kind of put these guys up against each other. So, different playing styles, different types of linebackers and all that stuff. But between AJ Randall already being there and you having these three other linebacker recruits, and look, they still got linebackers that are coming in over the next
Right.
2 weekends that they really like too. You got Drew Williams coming in the following
Right.
weekend, that June 5th, who they really like out of Georgia, and then they have a Ashton Whiteside out of Texas, who talking to people on Wednesday, they really like this kid too. Like linebacker is kind of, to me, it's one of the biggest question marks as far as just like what is actually going to happen here. I don't know how I would project it right now. I don't know if I was forced to, like, I don't know if I feel super great about Caden Henderson ending up in the class. Like maybe that ends up happening after the
Is it
weekend or
because
whatever the
of
case is.
resources? Is that why
I
you
don't
say
know.
that?
I don't know. I don't know. I think it's just I'm just trying to
Not
get a
that
read
Miami
on this
doesn't
situation.
have the money, but
Right,
just do they
right.
want to spend what that's going to
Exactly.
take,
I
is what
think
I'm saying.
that I think you have to kind of consider what you're getting for value. You have to be convicted about your evaluations. Like if there's a guy that you actually I'm using Drew Williams as an example. If you really like Drew Williams or if you really like Ashton Whiteside and you feel like, hey, this guy could be a really good player for us. Like, yeah, you know what? Maybe he's not Caden Henderson, but he could still be a quality, high level rotational guy, potentially a starter down the line, and we would feel comfortable with that. Like, and the price point is significantly different than a Caden Henderson type. And look, again, I'm just using this as an example. I don't want anyone to take this as like, oh,
Yeah,
Miami
yeah, yeah.
doesn't want to pay for Caden Henderson. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying is that I think that there's a lot of like kind of
You got to make
layers
the
to
puzzle
this
pieces
process.
fit.
Exactly. When you're piecing this class together with the limited amount of space you have, understanding too that I think getting a DJ Jacobs or a Jaden Bryant is a priority. So having the resources and
Right.
the funds for that. Miami's not gonna like blow their, potential. Like let's say like the Mark Matthews situation. Like if that's a situation they're gonna continue to kind of keep tabs on throughout the cycle. And they're always gonna have kind of like the war chest ready if
Right.
Mark Matthews decides that he wants to be here. Like I think that there's ways that you have to kind of piece this thing together. So for me personally, like the linebacker situation as a whole is very interesting to me because, like again, Caden Henderson is a player they really like and they've brought in multiple times. Noah Glover has visited multiple times already. Spent a couple days down in Coral Gables during the spring. Jalathan Mayfield has been down a few times already too. Spent a couple days here in the spring. Like Miami could theoretically take any one of these guys. Drew Williams they offered while he was here in the spring. There's a number of potential outcomes. And I truly just don't really know how the deck's going to shuffle out at this point at the linebacker position, opposite of AJ Randall, or they could just sit tight, right? Like they could, like that's
Right.
also on the table. They could just feel really good about AJ Randall and feel like, look, this is the guy that we want to take, and we're going to prioritize maybe some other spots. Like I think that this summer they're gonna have to make a lot of decisions, and they're gonna have to figure out where they want to. They're gonna be methodical. They're gonna be very intentional. So to me,
I think
I'm curious how it's gonna go.
I think one thing to consider too is they do really like Karsten Bush, who
Yeah.
is from this previous recruiting class who arrives this summer, and
On campus already.
on campus. So, you know, if they see him more this summer and they're like, man, we like Carson, maybe again, I'm not predicting this. Maybe there is a scenario where it's like, we're sticking with AJ Randall because we feel like Carson Bush is going to be a stud.
Hmm.
It's not what I would do, but if you want to keep a small class, you might have to make decisions like that. For me, like I do think Caden Henderson is a stud, but and this goes for every program across the country. How much do you want to pay for linebackers? And
Right.
the obvious thing to say is four position groups you should pay for are quarterback, O line, D line, corner. Those are the positions you should pay for. So it just is what it is. Real quickly, take me through Glover and Mayfield. Just like what's your understanding of what type of players they are, et cetera?
Yeah, I think Miami really likes both those guys. Like Glover is a guy that look, a lot of these schools like him, right? Again, you mentioned Georgia, A&M, Notre Dame. I think the general consensus is that it's going to be one of Notre Dame, Georgia, or Miami. And again, I think it's just figuring out how this is going to go. They like Noah Glover. They've been evaluating him. They've seen him in person throughout the process. So Miami definitely likes the idea of what he could be in this defense. And I think Jalathan Mayfield, I feel like is a name that it's to me, it's my read on it has been kind of hot and cold. It feels like they were on him kind of early, and
Hmm.
I didn't hear about him as much. And then like kind of late spring, it pivoted back where he was on campus, and they were kind of back into the mix. Like I don't know if I would project Jalathan Mayfield in the class right now. I
Hmm.
think Noah Glover, I could see a possibility. Um, Honestly, of those three, I think Glover might be the one I would probably like believe the most. Like I could anticipate the most being in the class. Again, I feel like with Caden Henderson, there's still just more I need to learn about how Miami's approaching that recruitment. So maybe I could be wrong, and maybe that's just my vibe on it. But that's the way I kind of view it.
Let's go to receiver. Miami's got a couple of receivers that are intriguing, set to visit. And we'll start with the local guy, Julius Jones, 5'10, 175 speedster, top 100 player, according to Composite. He's out of St. Thomas Aquinas. Totaled 876 yards and 14 touchdowns as a junior. He's run a 10.5 in the 100 meters. His dad, Julius Jones, former running back at Notre Dame, was also an NFL guy. I think it was like a second round pick by the Dallas Cowboys in the early 2000s. He finished his NFL career with 5,000 yards. His uncle is Thomas Jones, former Virginia running back, was a top 10 pick coming out of college, had a long NFL career as well. So he's an interesting guy visiting. Again, you know, well, let's just stay with Julius Jones. It seems like, of course, Notre Dame's in the mix with his dad being an alum. Oregon, Florida also seem to be in the mix. I think the main talking point to just kind of dive into, Gabby, is like, is he kind of like going through the process like he should, but he's essentially viewed as kind of like a Notre Dame lock? How would you characterize that situation?
Yeah, I'd be pretty surprised if he ended up anywhere other than Notre Dame at this point. Again, that legacy status is strong. Notre Dame's done a really good job of recruiting him. Oregon is another school that's been in the mix too, and Miami's been on him for quite some time at this point. So another one where it's just like maybe after the weekend I'll feel differently about it, but right now coming in, like Julius Jones is not someone I would pencil into the class right now.
And then four-star wide receiver Eli Woodard, who's out of California. He's the recent receiver who decommitted from USC. Got Miami fans all excited. He's number
Yep.
178 in the composite. Productive junior year, 51 catches for 1,070 yards, 17 touchdowns. He has run a 10.91 in the 100 meters. To me, Gabby, he's like a polished, high floor type of receiver. Like you know what you're going to get when you land a guy like that. What are the vibes here? Coming off his decommitment, Miami seemed like they had some momentum there.
Yeah.
Uh, is that momentum still strong going into this weekend?
I believe so. I think when he kind of stepped away from USC, there are definitely a couple schools outside of Miami that were in the mix. Cal and UCLA are both actually doing,
Yeah.
like, if you kind of go and look, they're actually doing a pretty good job of
UCLA
recruiting
is
this
top
cycle.
five, or they
Yeah,
were
UCLA has like,
recently.
Miami, I think jumped UCLA to get into the top five, like,
Okay.
or right there. So UCLA has a top 10 class right now that's like legitimately talented. So those programs are funded right now and they're recruiting at a higher level than they have in the past. So I wouldn't discount any of those local programs. He's a Southern California kid. If he wanted to stay on the West Coast, like there's two very real options for him there. But I think making this cross country trip, I think, is highly anticipated in his recruitment because Miami was definitely one of those schools that played a significant role in him stepping away from the Trojans. He wanted to explore this option, I think, and coming into the weekend again, I get the sense that Eli Woodard is a priority for Miami. They want this kid. And so I wouldn't be surprised if this is one that, kind of started to pick up steam coming out of the weekend. But I'm still kind of holding my breath because, that those West Coast ties and
Hmm.
Wanting to maybe be closer to home, I think is a very real factor. His quarterback, I think, is on the verge of either committing to Cal or UCLA. So I think, I think that that could be a potential factor. I think maybe it's going to be Cal. So it's something to watch and consider. But I definitely think Eli Woodard is someone who could end up in this class.
Four-star corner Jaden Carey is a 6 foot 165 player out of St. Thomas Aquinas again. Local guy. He's a borderline four-star according to the composite. Seems like Miami, Ohio State, Auburn are where he's set to visit. What do we need to know about Mr. Carey?
Yeah, I've actually gotten some Ohio State buzz here recently with Jaden Carey, just kind of poking around on his recruitment a little bit. I thought maybe Auburn was going to be where he ended up. It sounds like the Buckeyes have a pretty good chance at pulling him out of St. Thomas Aquinas. That would be the second player that they would get this cycle out of Aquinas. They took Edge White Smith, from there, I think earlier in the summer here in May. And so I wouldn't be surprised if Jaden Carey ended up being a Buckeye. Again, Jaden Carey's Miami has three cornerbacks already committed in the class. I think they're really happy with those three guys between Dante Wright, between A. King Hall and Sherrod Gordine, the local standout out of Hollywood. MacArthur. I don't really, I'm not really sure where Jaden Carey kind of fits into the equation here. Again, maybe these official visits, things change on these official visit weekends. So I am interested on what the feedback's going to be, but right now, again, not someone I would anticipate in Miami's class.
I want to get your take on just St. Thomas Aquinas and Miami in general, because they're a talented group, always have talent, right? But this cycle seems like Miami was, of course, interested in a bunch of those guys, most notably Mark Matthews. Uh, you know, what's your take on maybe why Miami isn't able to, get its share of players out of St. The top level players out of St. Thomas Aquinas here, like you would maybe expect?
Yeah, it's hard to know for sure, right? Have my
Yeah,
theories, and I'm not going to get myself in trouble on here. So, but honestly, I mean, I think to a certain extent, and I think this is true with any kid, right? You got to want to be at Miami. Like you got to want to be here. I think Miami's in a really healthy place as a program. They're winning, right? They're producing on offense for example, like in the case of like a Julius Jones, they
right.
have a fun offense. They've done really well on that side of the ball. With the Mark Matthews instance, Alex Mirabal just got a 3-and-out 5-star offensive tackle to go in the top 10 of the NFL draft. He did it at Oregon too. I think Miami just had, in the case of Zayden Gamble, Miami just had a safety drafted. What round did Jacoby go in the fourth round? And they're going to get more guys drafted between Zechariah Poyser and Bryce Fitzgerald in the future. And, anticipating JJ Dunnigan eventually develops into an NFL level guy. Like it seems like there's a lot of things kind of lining up for especially local kids to want to be a part of this. And obviously recruiting's a two-way street, but I think Miami made it pretty clear to Mark Matthews that they wanted him. I think they've made it pretty clear to Julius Jones that they wanted him. I think they made it pretty clear to Zayden Gamble that they wanted him. And those guys, we'll see with Julius Jones, of course. But for the most part, those guys have just wanted to go somewhere else. Like,
Yeah.
I think at some point the kids have to feel like Miami is a place that they want to be at, and staying home and being a part of this has to be kind of like the thing to do. And if the thing to do in any
Yeah, it
particular
needs to
maybe
be
circle up,
cool.
it needs to be cool. And I always, again, this is my perspective. No one has told me this, but like
Right.
for me, like I'm evaluating the situation from the outside, and I'm wondering if if these kids, I think the most influential people in these young kids' lives are their peers. Like, I think that can often be true. And if, let's say, some of these guys don't feel like Miami's the cool spot to be, they're not going to go to Miami because for one reason or another, they just don't feel like Miami is that spot for one reason or the other. So, and if their friends or potentially don't feel like Miami's a spot, then, they might not feel like Miami's the spot.
Yeah.
Theoretically, there's no reason why Mark Matthews shouldn't go to Miami, right? If Mark Matthews just didn't want to go to Miami. So I don't know if that's like a St. Thomas Aquinas thing. I don't know what exactly the situation is, and I'm sure there's a million things that people can say or
Yeah.
whatever the case
Every
is. But
situation's different too.
right, right.
And
These
they
are
have good
all
options. Like
right.
they're going
Notre
to
Dame's a good school,
yeah.
exactly. Texas A&M's a good school. Oregon's a great school. Ohio State is an awesome option. Like some kids maybe just want to leave for college and they
Yeah.
just don't want to be here, which is fine. Um, So there's a lot of different possibilities and reasons or whatever the case is, but I think it's just I don't know. I don't think it's a St. Thomas Aquinas issue. I think it's kind of I honestly it's kind of been just like a South Florida issue. Like if you look
Yeah,
at all like the top okay, per the recruiting rankings, not it's not hasn't always played out this way, but per the recruiting rankings, like the top player in South Florida, I don't think has actually picked Miami in the Mario Cristobal era. Like Calvin Russell went to Syracuse instead of going to Miami, which like kind of sounds ridiculous. And Derek Cooper went to Texas and Diabell went to Texas and again, Hakeem Williams at one point was the highest ranked recruit and like chose Florida State over Miami. It was a different time, I guess, in Miami's trajectory, but still, like these are all true things. That Jeremiah Smith went to Ohio State, which is understandable, but like, I think at some point Miami has to be kind of like the cool spot to be. And I don't think you have to deal with that when you go nationally because
right.
Miami can't be that cool spot to be
To
to someone
someone in
in a
Nixa,
different part of the country.
Missouri,
Right. It's someone
Miami's
exactly.
cool, right?
Right. For
So,
someone out of Manhattan, Kansas, like
right.
Miami might be cooler than Kansas State or Kansas, like in the case of JJ Dunnigan.
Or
Um,
Columbus, Ohio. Like
yeah.
in the case of JJ Dunnigan, right? Miami's a cool spot.
Yeah.
And I think that's right. So look, it's not something that I find concerning. I just find it as an
I don't either.
interesting like trend and like, you know, again, is there anything to it? I don't know. And with this coaching staff, I don't think it necessarily matters because like you're alluding to, they're just going to go national and find guys just as good.
Right.
So, um, but I think every Miami fan would prefer to have that fence around South Florida. So
100%.
that's the only reason why I bring it up. All right,
Yeah.
let's turn the page to four-star defensive end Marquise Evans. He goes 6'4", 240. He's out of Birmingham, Alabama, Spain Park High School. Borderline four-star. He's also visiting SEC schools, Tennessee, Auburn, Florida, South Carolina. So that tells you a little bit about what they view with his upside as a player long term. What do we need to know about Marquise Evans?
Yeah, this is a player that Miami really likes. They loved him in the spring, well, even going back to January during that initial evaluation period. Like this is a guy that shot up the board. Was originally viewed as like kind of someone who could develop into like an athletic interior defensive lineman. Now they're kind of talking about him as an edge, and I think that's what he wants to hear. Auburn is believed to be a school that's really in the thick of this recruitment. Florida has definitely gotten involved. I kind of view this as like Miami, Auburn, and Florida, just from what I've been able to gauge in this recruitment. But I definitely would give, his local program the edge right now. I think that this is kind of a big visit just because of how high they've been on him throughout the process. And if they can kind of start changing the tone, they did take Javon Dawson, so they do have like a young edge that they could kind of develop and they feel good about with the upside as well. And of course, like we've talked about, they're chasing all these top premium edge rushers. It's also not a guarantee that you get one of those guys, right? So I
Hmm.
think Marquise Evans, again, whether it's now or potentially even down the line, is someone that I think will just continue to track for Miami before the cycle ends.
Let's stay on the D line and go to three-star D tackle DeMarco Jenkins, 6'3", 265, at a Pearland High School in Pearland, Texas. SMU, TCU also involved. What do we need to know here?
Yeah, this is probably one of the more interesting storylines, right? This isn't I know this might not be like, again, three-star defensive tackle out of like the Houston area. Like, I don't think that he's going to steal the headlines in such a loaded weekend. But from my understanding, I think SMU and TCU have actually already hosted, and he's planning to make a commitment on Sunday, right after his Miami visit.
Hmm.
So I think this could potentially be one of those situations that it's balls in Miami's court. Are you going to take this kid? Are you going to what decision are you going to make here? Because this is kind of an opportunity to potentially get a defensive tackle that really they've been high on throughout the process. Like he's a
Hmm.
name that's consistently kind of come up just as you kind of talk defensive tackles with people in the program and things like that. So I am curious what's going to happen here with DeMarco Jenkins. I think this is one where maybe like the in-person evaluation, getting him in the film room, kind of sizing him up and getting a better feel for him physically, mentally, all those things, his personality could actually potentially play a difference or make the difference as far as just like, is this where Miami's going to go? Or
Right.
are they going to kick back and maybe, see what emerges in the fall, when these guys start playing as seniors and seeing if another defensive tackle kind of starts to blow up or trend up. But DeMarco Jenkins is definitely an interesting name and a guy that they like. And he's going to announce very, very soon. So those 5 spots could theoretically be 4 if they
Right.
decide to move forward with DeMarco Jenkins. So these are all like these decisions that they have to make that have implications. Like, is this one of the guys you want to fill one of these,
Right.
really like coveted spots with? Like, you feel like you're having to make these tight decisions, and DeMarco Jenkins is going to be a case study on where Miami is thinking, or how they kind of view what they're bringing in this weekend.
All right, let's close out just talking about the individual guys here with three-star defensive back, three-star safety, Loa Valade, who is out of West Boca Raton High School. Guy who came originally from Canada, right, Gabby? And he's an interesting prospect. Kind of your 5'11", 180 safety, kind of your speedy safety. Florida, Texas A&M, Auburn, also interested. He has visits set to those programs. He's run a 10.89 in the 100 meters. What do we need to know here?
Yeah, this is definitely an interesting prospect. I think that he's someone that Miami really liked. Just once he made the move down, I think he was at McAllee in Tennessee as a junior last year. So moved down to South Florida. I think he was at multiple spring practices and kind of started to blow up as a prospect with schools like Florida, A&M, Auburn, all in the mix here. So again, a lot of familiar names and programs. So kind of watching Miami and Florida right now. I think that those two schools are in a really good position for Loyola Valade. And yeah, so I think early in coming out of the spring, I thought that this was someone that Miami was on the verge of taking and potentially acquiring. And I think that maybe he hit the pause button on everything. But between him and Andre Hippolyte, who will come in, I believe, 2 weekends from now, I think that those would be two primary candidates to fill one of these to fill this like last spot in the safety room.
All right, so let's wrap up. Let's go big picture, right? And just kind of talk about this class and these visit weekends, how they can impact how Miami fills up these final spots. And, you've kind of maintained, right? Like you've made it clear one of the themes this month is going to be Miami wants to be picky, right?
Hmm.
And so I think within that, let's make that the theme, right? And so within that theme, I want to pick your brain, Gabby, on like who do you think, no matter what, has a spot in this class, no matter like how many spaces, quote unquote, are
Right.
left. Like, of course, like for example, like a DJ Jacobs would be that type of guy. I
Right.
think a Mark Matthews even would be that
Yep.
type of guy. Who else, just off the top of your head, and you haven't had time to like formulate your thoughts on this, who else do you feel like kind of would be characterized in that way of like, okay, these guys, no matter what, have a spot, even though we want to keep a small class?
Yeah, I think DJ Jacobs would be in that boat. I think Jaden Bryant would be in that boat. Um, I think, yeah, Mark Matthews would definitely be in that boat. And if I had to put like one more guy, I think one more guy I'd probably put in that boat is honestly Jackson Dollar, the tight end out of
Okay.
North Carolina, committed to Georgia. Like last I heard, they were still really working on him, and I think he's pretty locked in with Georgia. But I think Jackson Dollar is probably another one of those guys who I think would be probably in that conversation. And then I think honestly too, probably like Myson Johnson Cook, the running back who committed
Okay.
to Auburn over Miami. Like I think if Myson Johnson Cook kind of circled back around and was like, "Hey, I wanna be here," like I think Miami would make that work too. So I think that's a good group. Maybe there's more that don't come to mind immediately, but I think those are a few for sure.
Do you think, like, you look at the visit list on Inside the U right now, and it's pretty front loaded in terms of like at the start of the month, there's big numbers, and then it kind of dwindles as the month progresses. Do you think as the month progresses, more names could be added to these official visit weekends, or do you think Miami's going to even keep it tight here in the later months because maybe the class is kind of filled out?
Yeah, I honestly would be pretty surprised if like the late weekends are like super filled out. I think that there's going to be some, but I think that those are going to be maybe smaller, more intimate visits, or maybe that's when they try to get guys like some flip guys in later in the month, depending on how this summer and how these official visits shake out. I would anticipate they're going to fill to a certain extent. I don't know if they're going to be like as loaded or
16.
as right. I don't think it's going to be 16 prospects deep for either one of these weekends. I think it's 16 the first weekend. So far, we're at
Yep.
12, but there's a couple guys I need to take off of the second weekend. So it's probably the second weekend right now, from what we know, is probably closer to 10 than
Okay.
12. Um, and I don't even know if we'll get into the double digits on
Right.
any of the last two weekends. And so we'll see. But that's the way I kind of view it all right now.
And last thing I want to touch on with you, and look, we'll probably just touch on him all month until he totally says, I am going to this school or going to that school. But DJ Jacobs, what
Yeah.
is, what's the vibe with him? It seems like that he's playing things close to the vest in terms of like, is he going to take official visits this summer? I assume he is, but maybe he's not announcing where he's going, etc. Again, he's committed to Ohio State. Um, but Miami's definitely pursuing him, and it's my understanding that he's playing ball with Miami. So, what are the vibes you get with DJ Jacobs and Miami, and just in general with anyone else who's trying to flip him too?
Yeah, I mean, the way I kind of view this is as a Miami Ohio State battle. Like, I think ultimately at the end of the day, he's going to end up at one of those two schools based on what I know about his process at this is Thursday, March 28th. I'm sure it'll change. And look, there was a point where I thought maybe DJ Jacobs was going to officially visit this weekend. I don't know if that's going to happen. I don't think it's going to happen. But look, I think that DJ Jacobs is a name that we're going to be tracking and talking about into
Right.
November. And, maybe it's wiser to get DJ Jacobs to officially visit in the fall for the Florida State game than it is to get him in the
Okay.
summer now for whatever, or, for a weekend official visit. So I don't anticipate, I don't think there's any real rush. I don't think DJ Jacobs is going to make a decision tomorrow or anything like that about what the final decision is going to be or where he's formally headed. But I know Miami is continuing to chip away. From what I understand, there have been conversations and dialogue, productive conversations and dialogue, but this is a long game recruitment where you're going to have to sweat this thing out to the end. And we've seen this before. We've heard this before with other recruits in the past. Some have worked out, some haven't. So this is just a part of the deal, and this is the game you got to play if you want to get a guy like DJ Jacobs.
All right. We'll get out of here on that note. Again, official visit season's here. Now's a great time to subscribe to InsideTheU.com. Get a yearly deal, usually about 50% off if you subscribe for the first time. So go take advantage of that. Gabby's all over it. And, as always, hopefully Miami hires anyone but Michael Yormark to be its next AD. And until next time, take care.